Let me ask you a question basically. What would happen if your website was hacked or a bad plugin update or you faced a disaster today? And I really want you to think about that because a lot of people haven't thought about that. And it happens to everybody. It even happens to the big guys. And what I'm going to show you is how to prevent this.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another A2 hosting webinar. Today I've got a longtime friend of mine, a great entrepreneur, awesome product owner, manager, director, president, all the things for WordPress. And one key subject, is backups. And so I've got John Turner here from Automotive. He'll share a little bit more about what he does within Automotive, which is a great company. Ran by John, my friend Syed, and other people I've known for a long time. So I'm really excited. This is kind of a reunion for us, John and I, because we've known each other and we go way back. But today we're going to be talking about backups. And backups are near and dear to my heart. John knows this, so I'm really excited about it because when you build a website and you're putting your content out there, having a backup is foundational. It's non-negotiable. You got to have it. Things will happen. And so I'm really delighted to have John here because he does this all day, every day. And I might chime in a time or two, but I'm excited about this. And so welcome, John Turner, to the A2 hosting webinar series. And I appreciate you being here, John.
Awesome. Thanks to you, Corey. I'm super excited to be here today. And I'm excited to share some knowledge with you and hopefully educate you because if you don't have reliable backups, it can be very painful. I kind of want to show you some gotchas with the backups. So the title of my talk today is Most WordPress Sites Lack Reliable Backups. And I must say, I've been burned from this myself more than once. And if you haven't been burned from this, it's just a matter of time. There's actually a stat by Security, which is a security company, that says 40% of websites, WordPress websites, have no backup, and 74 actually never test them. So the potential for revenue loss, time, client trust is very high. So today I'm going to share with you 3 secrets on what will transform your site into a secure and reliable site that if the worst does happen, you can get it back. So let me get started here. Let me see if I can figure out how to, there we go. All right, and again, if you stay till the end, we do have an exclusive discount for you for Duplicator. But what I'm going to teach you today is a framework. So I would like for you to use Duplicator. If you have something else you want to use, that's perfectly fine. But what I'm going to teach you is a framework to ensure that your backups are reliable when you need them. So let's dive into the real problem. So the real problem with WordPress backups is you're actually just a click away from disaster. So let me ask you a question basically. What would happen if your website was hacked or a bad plugin update or you faced a disaster today? And I really want you to think about that because a lot of people haven't thought about that. And I got this image here off of ChatGTP, and it's kind of funny. This is a little bit dramatic, but I've actually been in this situation where I'm like, oh no, what did happen? What did I just do? So it does happen. And it doesn't have, and it happens to everybody. It even happens to the big guys. So this was, I guess, it was about 10 years ago, a long time ago. I was hosting, or I was helping host WordCamp Charleston. And we had a speaker named Tony Perez, who was one of the founding members of Security. I hope I'm saying that right. And he was there presenting, and I noticed he was a little preoccupied. And what had happened is he was helping Woo Themes with a hack. And for those of you who don't know who Woo Themes is the company that started WooCommerce. So it started off as a theme shop way back in the day, and now they're WooCommerce. And you can read, this is from their blog post here, but essentially what happened is they were hacked. They actually had backups, but the hackers deleted their backups as well. And this almost killed their business. And what I'm going to show you is how to prevent this. Because while backups are important, it's how many you have, where you store them, and how you restore them is key. Okay? So my goal today is to share with you 3 secrets on how to do that. And I want to make you as happy as this person here because our goal is not to have to worry about websites and our backups and that kind of stuff. I want to educate you on the potential dangers and how to mitigate those. I want to show you how to have the right insurance policy for your website. So, as Corey mentioned, my name is John Turner. I'm the president of Duplicator, where we've helped over 1 million people overcome the fear of losing their data. I have 20 plus years of industry experiences. My plugins have been downloaded over 10 million times. And frankly, I've seen just about every WordPress disaster scenario that there is. So, what are some of the WordPress disasters that we face as WordPress owners and users? So, this first stat I got off of here is from the WP Mayor, and I didn't verify this, but they're pretty reliable source, so I'm gonna take them there at their word. But they said over 30,000 WordPress sites get hacked daily, which is a mind-blowing number. My site has been hacked once or twice. Luckily, I was able to recover it, but it does happen. One of the big thing is plugin conflicts. I know people are updating their plugins basically all the time. And this is probably the one thing I deal with. I'll update a plugin, poof, I got a white screen of death. What do you do in that case? That happens all the time. You can have hosting failures. You can have human errors. You can accidentally delete something, or you can have a rogue employee get angry and maybe delete something. It does happen. And then you can have migration errors. So what is your insurance policy? The policy is a solid backup plugin and a plan. And not only that, you want to make sure that you're scheduling backups regularly. You have a cloud storage solution. You can easily restore or migrate when you need to. So, not all backups are created equal. And you're probably thinking, you know what, I've got a backup solution, or I'll just go with the cheapest one, or I'll rig something up and make it happen. But I want to show you why Duplicator is one of the best. We actually used to use VaultPress. And VaultPress is owned by Automatic and Jetpack, and it's a great company. But what happened is one of our sites got hacked, and we were trying to restore it. And it actually took 4 hours for VaultPress to rebuild our site so we could download it. That's not even restoring it. It took us 4 hours to do that. And we were like, that is just not acceptable. If our site goes down, we have to be up very quickly. And it's not just us. You can go find this. Like this person right here was trying to just do a small backup. And, he thought it was going to take 15 minutes. And again, it took hours for him to back up. So again, you have to understand that not all backups are created equal. You got to understand that if you have a disaster, you need to get back online, especially if you have a e-commerce company or something that's mission critical. So here are the 3 secrets. The first is, even if you have a backup, over 50% fail during restoration. That's secret number 1. Secret number 2, don't make the mistake of only relying on your host. Hosting backups are awesome, but it should not be your only lifeline. And secret number 3 is Duplicator is the only plugin that does not require WordPress to actually restore. And I'll show you why that's important coming up here. So what I'm going to teach you today is something called the 3-2-1 backup strategy or framework. And it's the gold standard basically for dealing with disasters. So let's get into that. All right, as I mentioned, even if you have a backup, over 50% fail during the restoration process. So I'm going to date myself here a little bit, but after I graduated college, I worked for a company called Tapped Into. And what we did is we encoded videos. This was before YouTube, for the Real Player. I don't know if anybody remembers the Real Player, but that was the OG player for the web. And, what happened was the server that we had them on failed. And we had a tape backup system. But guess what? When we went to go restore that tape backup system, it failed as well. So you got to understand that you got to test your backups, right? Even though you might have a backup, it may fail. And, we're not the only one. You can see other people. You can go to Reddit and see other people where their backup, they've tried to restore and it failed. So you've got to test your backups to make sure that what you have backed up actually works. So Why do most WordPress backups fail when you need them most? Well, there's a lot of different reasons. But what happens is it could be incomplete files. You could be missing critical files. It could be a database corruption. You could have PHP timeout issues with larger sites. You could have plugin conflicts if you activate them in the wrong order. You could have integrity issues. Or you could have need WordPress actually to be working to restore WordPress, right? So this is create something what I call the verification gap. It's the dangerous space between your backup and recovery. So these are stats from a 2003 WebArc security survey, which says 75 to 80% of WordPress owners never test their backup restores. Only 15 have verified that it is recoverable. So if you break this down into what that means is if you haven't tested it, it's probably going to take you 4 to 8 hours to get back online. If you have, you're looking at 45 minutes to 90 minutes. And with Duplicator, it's actually 15 minutes. And I'll show you that live here pretty soon. All right, so the three in the 3-2-1 framework is you need 3 copies of your backups. So what happens here is if one of them fell, like our tape backup did, if we had 2 other, statistically, one of those would have worked and we would have been able to recover that. So there's no single point of failure. 3 are a must. Secret number 2, don't make the mistake of only relying on your web hosts. As I said, a lot of web hosts do backups for you now, and that's great. That's awesome. You should have that security. But I'm going to show you why it can be dangerous. So with hosted backups, basically your backup is on the same infrastructure as your site. This creates a single point of failure, which creates a vulnerability. Okay. There also might be account issues that you might have, which might lock you out from your backups. So this creates something that I call the hosting backup trap. Again, if you have issues with your hosting or your hosting upstream provider has issues, your backup's locked within that infrastructure. So you cannot get it out. You might have to open a ticket. You might have to wait for that ticket to respond. So there's no guarantees that that backup is going to work or be ready when you need it most. So then we have the 2. And the 2 states that you need to have 2 backups loaded on 2 different separate systems. So let's say that's one, your website, and another one on your computer or offline or somewhere else, okay? Somewhere that you have direct control through your own accounts that you can access even if your web host is down and unavailable. You need a recovery lifeline because, again, if you don't have a lifeline or independent storage, you don't have a recovery path, basically. You're stuck in the water until your hosting service comes up or the service they provide on comes back up that you can restore your website. So, again, three website copies, 2 different locations, and I'll get to the one here in just a second. All right, so secret 3, Duplicator is the only plugin that does not require WordPress to store. And I'll say that quote because I think that's true. I don't think anybody else has come through and created a standalone installer. But this is critical because what happens if WordPress dies and then you need WordPress to restore it? So this creates a paradox, right? If you can't get into WordPress, how are you going to restore your website? So these critical failures make most backups unusable. Duplicator's independent installers works without WordPress. It'll even install WordPress for you. So that gets down to the 1 here. The 1 is you must have a completely offsite and independent copy that you can get back without any dependencies. So this would even work with a new host. So say your hosting company went down and you just want to change to a new host. That is the level of reliability you need. You also need to get back quickly. And with Duplicator, well, you can get back in about 15 minutes, depending on your size here. And I'm going to show you that a real life example with RafflePress of how that we can recover that site within 15 minutes. How does the 15-minute recovery process work? Well, the way Duplicator works is we have an independent installer.php file. And again, this is outside of WordPress, so it just runs with PHP. And then we have the archive. So it works with any PHP compatible hosting, and we automatically set up your database and configuration, set up WordPress, no technical knowledge required. All right. So that's the 3-2-1 strategy. I'm going to show you what it looks like in practice with RafflePress. So I was going to go on the RafflePress website and kind of do this live, but I was like, you know what? Nobody wants to watch a backup build. So I just took screenshots here and we'll walk through it. So again, this is the RafflePress website, and RafflePress is another company that I own. And we use Duplicator. Again, we used to use VaultPress, but we switched over to Duplicator. And the strategy that we've implemented is we have one full backup that runs weekly, and you can see that it's the gigabyte backup here. We have one that runs daily, and then we have some right here with the green that are on demand. And that green is special because that's a recovery point. And I want to highlight what that actually does. But before I do that, let's get into where we store them. So when I say 3 copies, here's where we store our 3 copies. We store one right beside the web server. So that's local to the web server in the WP content folder. This is so we can do quick restores. We don't have to download it. Again, this is a gig file. It could take a little while to download it depending on the speed. And we stored it on Google Drive. Finally, I store some on my local drive, especially when I'm doing configuration updates or content updates or anything major. I pull it down. So those are our 3 copies. And again, we support a lot more than just Google Drive. I use Google Drive because we have a ton of storage there, but you can use Amazon S3, Google Drive, OneDrive, Dropbox, FTP, basically any S3 compatible storage you can use. And again, it's crucial that you have something that is outside of your infrastructure that your website is hosted on, something independent that you can get to. All right. Again, our backup schedule is weekly, full drive, daily the database, but we also support hourly, we support monthly, and soon we'll support incremental. Your schedule will depend on how often your content changes. If you're running an e-commerce store, you'll want to do it hourly or incrementally. If it doesn't change that much, you can change that. So you can schedule based on your needs and how much reliability and basically redundancy you need to have. So let's take a scenario on RafflePress here. Like, what if I updated RafflePress and all of a sudden I got a white screen of death? Well, I showed you earlier what we had there was that on-demand backup, and it had a green icon. What that basically means is we have a disaster recover set point set. And when we do that, it gives us a link that we can copy. If anything goes wrong, we can paste that link in the browser and start the restore process. Absolutely outside of WordPress. So if WordPress is jacked up, we can start the recovery process. So what does that look like? So here's a screenshot here. I just pasted it in, and this URL is hidden because it has random numbers on it, so not just anybody can get to it. But we go here, and it simply tells us, all right, here's the recovery point. All the systems look good. All you got to do at this point is hit restore, and you are literally back up to where you were just before you updated your plugins 10 minutes ago, whatever the case may be. So, what if my host was completely down? This is dramatic. I hope no host is burning down here, but I have had my host burn down in the not the literal sense, but figurative sense here, and things are just completely bad, and you need to just change host or you need to get back up ASAP. How do you handle those situations? Well, again, with Duplicator, it's just a matter of going to that third party. So in this case, since my host is down, I can't go to my local host. Maybe I don't have the copy on my local desktop drive. I go up to Google Drive and I can download the version I want. I just download it to my machine here. And when I did this, it took 3 minutes, and that was a gig. So we're 3 minutes into the process at this point for a gig size site. And that works that's a pretty large site in the grand scheme of things. Now, how do you restore it? Well, again, as I mentioned, you don't need WordPress to restore the website because a lot of times WordPress is not there. We do have a drag and drop interface. So if you want to set up WordPress site or you go to a new host and they have WordPress ready and you install the plugin, you can just drag it on there. But the better solution is to just upload the installer and the archive file directly via FTP using your favorite FTP client to your new hosting site. And then that will start the recovery process. And this is, again, independent of WordPress. You start this, it'll recognize your archive. There are advanced settings if you're changing like DB prefixes or anything, but essentially all you need to do on this is type in your new database username and password, and that will start the process. It's that easy to get back up and going. So this took me a minute to upload. So we're 4 minutes into the process right now. And then after you do that, again, it will confirm some things to make sure everything is ready and can be installed on the server. And finally, it'll start extracting the files. It will recreate the database, install WordPress, and find and replace all the variables. And when it's done with all that, it will simply give you an admin login that you can click on, and it'll automatically delete any traces of itself to make sure that your site is basically back to where you were at. This took 10 minutes here. So it literally took me 14 minutes to get back up and going on a completely new host here. You can see up here at the top, maybe you can't, might be a little small, but this is the IP address. So at this point, I've got my new RafflePress site up and going. The only thing I have left to do is point my domain at this IP, and we are back up and going like nothing ever happened. All right, so to recap, the 3-2-1 framework gold standard for backups is you need at least 3 copies of your data. You need at least 2 different types of storage media, one of those being off-site, and you need to test your restores regularly. That is very crucial in the process here. So, and I'm not just making this up. Now, I went to Claude, which is my favorite AI solution. You can say, what is WordPress best backup principles? And you can see right here, use the 3-2-1 backup strategy. It's as simple as that. Most people don't know about it until it's too late, but this will keep you from having the pain of losing your website. And believe me, it does happen. So I searched Reddit here, and I came across this, and I actually felt really bad for this guy. But this is a cautionary tale. This guy spent 10 hours on his honeymoon fixing his hacked website. And if you read through the comments, it's pretty sad, but it's comical a little bit at the same time. But its overall message is maintain good backups. You will regret it someday if you don't. And I can attest to that. I think I've shown you enough proof here that having good backups, especially if your site is mission critical, is non-negotiable. It's something you have to do. So everything I taught you again works. You can use whatever plugin you want. If you do want to use Duplicator, we have all this included. So we do automatic schedule backups, complete WordPress site packages, cloud storage integration, one-click restores, site migration wizard. We do encrypted backups. We have backup history. You can do custom backups. So like I showed you, we had the database only. You can do media only. You can do plugin only. Any combination you want, you can do. You can do multi-site. So if you have multi-site and want to go to a single site, you can do that. We also have email notifications and a recovery point system. So again, you have 2 choices today. You can continue to do what you're doing and hope the worst doesn't happen. But I think, as I said, it's not a matter of if, it's when. Or you can implement the strategies I've taught you and make sure that you can sleep at night and you do have that insurance policy to make sure your site and your asset is safe and protected. So if you want to use Duplicator, we have a special discount for everyone. It's 60% off. We have several different plans. You can go, if you're interested, look and see which one, if any of these match what your needs are. And you can use the link below, and that's till Friday at midnight if you want to use this. And again, I hope, again, the least you take away from this is the strategy that we've taught today. So that is it, Corey, on my side. That is what I wanted to get through to everyone today.
Yeah, I think a couple of takeaways. And while we're talking and just sharing this, we're gonna uh, post your questions to the Q&A button, and I've already got a couple lined up. But you know, I too have lost personal and professional data, websites, WordPress specifically. Similar stories, to everything you're talking about. And some of the keys, just kind of pulling out some insights you shared today, is to have a backup, but be able to restore or move that data somewhere else. That's freedom and flexibility. In addition to the security best practices you talked about, is you may want to move that site somewhere else to a
Right.
different hosting plan, different hosting service, but also in the event of a hack or whatever might happen to be able to restore that. And John walked you through some of that. Um, so thank you, John. And then there's a couple questions that are coming up for you. And I wanted to also note this, even though A2 and other hosts may have backups, one important point I want to mention is what he said is have it somewhere else is just a good strategy. It's just a good backup strategy to make sure those are accessible. Things happen from time to time, but then having the ability to restore it, get it somewhere offsite, and then restore it back to wherever you want it to go, absolutely foundational.
Absolutely.
So, okay, Bonnie asks, how often should I make a backup when things are changed, or what are your thoughts on that? And I know, John, you've been in e-commerce and done a lot of e-commerce work with your products as well, but there's the brochure type side. It's just out here. There's a blog,
Yeah.
rapidly updated. There's e-commerce. Can you talk through a little bit about your suggestions for when and how people should back up?
Yeah. So, if you have a content site, I would say at the minimum weekly. If you're publishing content every day, you might want to do it daily. If you have an e-commerce site, you want to do it probably hourly or incremental, because that is always changing essentially. And it really depends on how often that content is changing and how important the data is on the site. I would say. So, hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, so having that complete backup, of your full site because things happen, you want to be able to restore the design, the theme, the different settings. Like John was mentioning, so I think, like you said, really depends on how much is data changing. So, like you mentioned WooCommerce earlier in one of the examples, but if you got a WooCommerce site on your WordPress website and it's, whatever the volume is, if you have something that happens in between things, you could lose customer records, customer things that are invaluable. So take that in for what it's worth there. Is it content? Okay, how much am I willing to lose potentially? And of course, when it's the commerce site, an e-commerce site, really think that through. What's the volume? Okay, if you had something you missed it yesterday and you only had the day before, how much would you lose? And that's a good way to think through how often you should make the right decisions for you. Again, putting those offsite, you know, and storing those offsite. Okay, a couple people actually had, how do we test our backups? That's a great
Okay.
question.
So, I actually asked our support team before I gave this. So I was like, "Has anyone had a backup fail due to it not being able to be restored with Duplicator?" And I talked to our lead dev, and Duplicator actually verifies the integrity aspect of your backup. So when it's created, it verifies the integrity, and before it's restored, it verifies the integrity. And I was told that we have not had a single ticket where somebody was not able to restore. Now, even with that being said, I would test your restore process at the minimum quarterly to understand you have a process in place and to understand how long it takes you to get that restore back. Don't do it on your live website. Go get a different website. Just act like you're trying to move it to a new host. Get a feel for it, especially if your site is mission critical. You want to do this at a minimum quarterly.
It's a uh, great suggestion there for sure, John. Um, I would also add, go back to what mission critical data could you have and do that. But I think every 3 months is an excellent thing just to have it. When they said how to test, John, my thought would be is have a staging environment,
Okay. Yeah.
just and I want to be clear with what John's talking about today and what we're talking about is a WordPress site. So there's other things you may do with your A2 hosting packages. These things are just oriented to a WordPress site, backup and restoring that site. So I want to make that clear. But testing your WordPress backup, would you say spin up a staging environment and test it up quarterly?
Yeah, absolutely. Or do it on your computer, your local computer. You can use like there's local several Automatic has a local testing suite that you can put on your computer. So either of those will work. Those are yearly prices, by the way. I saw somebody ask if that's monthly or yearly, but yeah. Has
You
anybody here lost their website and not been able to back up? I'm just wondering. Because I know, Corey, you said you I had. I think if you're in the game long enough, it's just it will happen at some point, right?
Yes, yes. That's actually John knows some of my past as my former company I started, we had a backup plugin and but that came out of this exact situation here. I lost personal things on my website because we had a server. From time to time, hard drive. Now this was 15 years ago, but from time to time, things happen, right? And we lost client at the time with my former company, client data, and my personal stuff because we had a hard drive meltdown. We didn't have a backup, and it hurts to lose things. There was personal
Mm.
photos on there that I uploaded to my website, blog posts, things like that. It wasn't too mission critical, but it hurt. Now the client sites, that was painful.
Yeah.
Um, but you never wanna be there. You wanna have the insurance like John's talking about. And again, restoring or backing up and having those files off the same site where your server is on or
Mhm,
the same server that your site is on.
mhm.
Someone mentioned that in the queue, and I'm trying to catch up with all these questions. And regarding the staging site, so John mentioned set up a staging site. So let's say you're using cPanel hosting with A2 hosting. Um, you can install another WordPress site. Don't have to attach a domain to it, but restore it to that new and just call it whatever you want to call it. Or like John said, um, have a local environment. And I can't. I'm juggling too much, or else I'd give some links to the local stuff. But you're on an A2 hosting plan, spin up a test, use cPanel, spin up a new WordPress site, and then you can restore to that and just to see if your data is all there and it looks good. That's a good practice. Would you agree, John?
Absolutely. Yep. Yep.
Cool. Okay, so there's some questions about lifetime. Is this a yearly subscription plan here?
Correct. So those are the yearly prices there. We do not offer a lifetime subscription, but those are yearly there. And again, those are based on the number of sites you need it for and a few other things. If you follow that link, it'll take you to our pricing page.
Paula mentions, how often do you update offsite? I think we just covered that, but what's a good best practice for updating plugins? Should you restore your site if a plugin is no? Well, let me go with the best practice for updating plugins. And I
So
think in conjunction with a backup. So let me give you a scenario, John. Yoast SEO, a very popular plugin. There's a major update that comes for that. You're relying on your site for SEO. What is your suggestion about before you update that or even WordPress big updates? What's your best practice around that?
yeah, so I mentioned this in the talk here, but we have something called recovery points. So before you update your plugins, what you can do is manually take a snapshot of your website and set it as a recovery point. It will give you a link that you can copy to your desktop or whatever. And if your website bricks or doesn't or has an error, you can use that link to restore exactly back to where you were at before the plugin update occurred. So that's typically how we deal with plugin updates. We actually have staging servers for our website, so we test them locally as well. But most people are not going to test their plugins locally before they do it. It's just, that's defeats the purpose but so what you want to do is typically take a snapshot of your server before you make any major changes to it. Updating themes, plugins, or WordPress core.
So some of those things can break, even though there's great developers behind all these plugins and different services. Sometimes it can cause a conflict within. So if you have a doubt, that's the time to push. Make sure you have that backup before you do those big upgrades. And
Mhm.
then the recovery points are excellent. Does the host work for Duplicator? Yes. John is the president of Duplicator. It's one of several products that he mentions, but John, you can answer that for yourself.
Yeah, yeah. So I run CProd, Raffle Press, So Cprod is like a page builder, drag and drop. Ravelpress is a Google Way plugin, and we recently just launched a site called One Page GA, which is like a simple dashboard for Google Analytics 4, and I run Duplicator as well. So yeah, have my hands full, but I have a wonderful team that helps me. So
Patricia just made a comment, and I just wanted to pull it up for our conversation here. She said, I lost a website recently, but fortunately was able to restore via A2 hosting. That's great. We want to always come through for you. But what John's mentioning here is having more control for you too, especially with this data. Not just assuming, okay, the host is going to help back it up or help you get it restored. There's those tools within A2 hosting for sure. However, part of the thing I want to pull out, what John's saying is, do that part yourself too, to restore offset. So the protocol, like quarterly checking those things, making sure there's regular backups according to the site needs, and then the ability to restore back and forth. And I think that's an important differentiator there
yeah,
is we try to do our best today to hosting a course, but having this control for your WordPress sites, very, very key.
absolutely. Yep.
Okay, great question here. If you back up daily, isn't that a lot of content to save using up a lot of space, which is backups? Does it replace previous ones? So that, okay, if you're backing up locally to where your server is, or even offsite, you could have a wall of backups. But John, is that question clear to you? You know,
Yes.
taking up
So
space, and how do you approach that?
yeah, we keep so you can set this in Duplicator. We keep 7 days worth of backups essentially, or 7 copies worth of backups. And as far as cost, it's actually included with our Google Drive, but even if you were to use something like Dropbox, it's typically pennies per gig. It's not expensive. So most websites are not going to be the massive website. So even if you're hosting, 30 gigs, or whatever extremely large amount, we're talking a couple bucks maybe. I mean, it definitely the cost is negligible compared to the value you get in case something were to go wrong, essentially. So as far as how many backups to keep, that's up to you. Because what can happen, is sometimes your website gets hacked and you won't know it for a few days, and you need to go back to a clean version before that. So again, some people will keep as far back as 30 days. It's just whatever makes you feel comfortable.
Absolutely. We're giving you some criteria to make really good decisions for yourself. The value of the site, what is going on. If it's e-commerce, um, content marketing, sales, a part of your sales efforts, critical most websites are now. Um, then another criteria is the amount of data that's changing. So if you're doing something you have an e-commerce site and there's 500 things coming in, sales coming in each day, you might want to evaluate that according to that. So, and then John just mentioned something great. It could take you a couple of days to realize something's wrong, something happened, like a hack. And so, just making it good, 7 days they've mentioned he uses. Just thinking back through for that because you want to make sure you just have the right amount. But to the point someone made about tons and tons of backup taking up storage, it can. So then make a judicious decision for yourself. Okay, is 7 enough for me? 7 daily back. Is 14 enough? What's that degree of risk tolerance you have to make sure you have it? And then again, if it's going to the local server, you're jamming up space there, and that's not a helpful strategy for you either. We keep talking about offsite. So if you're in Google Drive or the things that John's mentioned, just weigh those yourself. Sometimes you might want 2 months, but that's according to you, and we've kinda given you some criteria as we've gone to help you think through those answers. Okay, so is Duplicator a, one-time purchase, yearly subscription? I'll let you answer that. I know the
Yeah,
answer
so
already, but
yeah, so it is a yearly subscription. These are introductory prices here. So you'll get 60% off the first year. And then if you want to keep it after that, you'll pay the yearly fee. We do not offer any lifetime purchases at this point in time.
Bonnie asked, "How much should I pay a web developer to put a site up from a backup?" That's a good question.
Uh,
If you're
so
using a tool. Go ahead, John.
I was just gonna say we are actually about to launch a migration service on Duplicator. So, like, if you want somebody to migrate it for you or restore it for you, we'll be offering that the service, and we do it based on the size of your website. And most companies that I've researched will do it based on the size of your website and how big it is and what type it is. If it's WooCommerce, it's typically a little bit more than just a standard WordPress website. So, yeah, those are typically how it works.
Ninad asked, could you maybe tell us a little bit more about the difference between an on-demand backup and the valid reasons to do a full backup? I think we're talking about oh, words are escaping me today, but the on-demand backup versus a full download backup.
Yeah. So at Raffle Press, we do a full backup weekly. That's to make sure we have a full snapshot of our website every week that we can go back to if absolutely everything were to go haywire. We do daily database backups. And the reason we do that is if content or something happens to the content, we can restore the database and then manually push up the 3 images or whatever the case may be with the images. On demand is what you want to do before you do a major site upgrade. So think about you had updated your plugins in say 3 months, and you're about to update them all. You want to take a manual snapshot so you have a point in time that you can recover back to in case that update goes wrong. So manual snapshots are basically whenever you're about to do something major, you're about to change the web design, just anything that has the potential to be damaging. And your scheduled backups are just the ones you don't have to think about. They're just there always.
Yes, and that's what you want. Like, and what John was mentioning too is why you put a reminder to go check, trust, but verify. Get the schedules going for your backups, then come back and verify it with checks. If you need to make a calendar, reminder for yourself, go back and verify those things. Mark asked, how does Duplicator work with websites on subdomains? I think you talked a little bit about multi-site, but specifically, I want to make sure we hit that if we didn't.
Yes, so it works, absolutely. We have full multi-site compatibility or subdomain capability. So if you have a multi-site, you can back up individual sites individually, or you can back up the whole thing at once. You can actually move a subsite that's a multi-site to a regular WordPress site. So we have the ability to interchange through those platforms there. So we have full compatibility with multi-site. Or if it's just a subdomain, works exactly like a normal website.
I think we've covered most of the high leverage issues. So appreciate you, John,
Awesome.
coming on, sharing framework about backups. This is a vital subject for everybody. You need backups all the way from your phone to your website. You need backups, a way to easily restore your data. But we're talking specifically about WordPress websites today. And I thank you so much, John. Um,
Yeah, this was awesome, and I hope everyone will take this and implement it, and again, not be like the guy that had to spend 10 hours on his honeymoon restoring a
I
WordPress
wasn't on the
website.
honeymoon, but I've been there where you were literally copying pages from Google Cache to get data
Yeah,
back. That's
right.
not a scenario you want to be in. John, I forgot
Exactly.
one last question before we let you go. What are
Yes.
you excited about what you're doing? You got a couple of things you're doing at Awesome Motive. What are some
Yeah.
things you're excited about?
So again, like I said, we just launched one page GA. So if you've struggled with Google Analytics 4 being painful and hard to use, we've launched a solution for that. It's onepagega.com, makes a simple dashboard for Google Analytics 4. And then with Duplicator, we're actually going to be offering incremental backup soon. So that's something we haven't offered. Some people call them real time, but we'll be offering that pretty soon with our own cloud storage solution. So we're super excited about that because we'll be able to offer a lot more and can do a lot more stuff with your backups to ensure that you need them when they're ready. So yeah, that's what's coming down the pipe here, and look forward to hopefully this summer at some point.
Excellent. Well, I just put a link in there. We'll have them in the show notes, onepagega.com. Check out what he's doing there. That's super cool. Super, super smart stuff. So, well, John, thanks so much for being on another A2 hosting webinar, and appreciate all you shared today. Offered something really gracious back to our audience here. So thanks so much. It was great seeing you again after many years of knowing each other. Love what you're doing, where you're going. Thanks everybody for being here. We have another webinar Friday, and we have got a whole schedule. So make sure you're coming back to the A2 Hosting blog, checking out what we're doing. We got more of these in the lineup. In fact, some of the colleagues at John at Awesome Motive and others, agency owners coming in, sharing their expertise and much, much more. So stay tuned.
Awesome.
Thanks, John, and everybody for today.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.